How many? That's the question. How many?
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day, whether you're watching this show on YouTube, wherever you want to download your podcast. This show is always free, and as you know, I always appreciate your support. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms will apply. Pick a number between 2 and, I'm going to keep it realistic for you, between 2 and 5. How many 5 stars can USC close out its 2025 recruiting class with? Right now, they lead the country. Well, they're tied with Ohio State. Both programs have 3 apiece. So I'm going to set the bar. I'm going to set the low end of the bar at 2. Right now, Justice Terry, Julian Lewis, and Elijah Gibson are already committed. However, there is some smoke out there that one will decommit at some point before signing day. Just the way the game is played, you have to anticipate USC not being able to hold on to all of them. You can pick out which one it won't be. What makes this such a random guessing game is that players get re-ranked. So players who are right now are considered a 4-star commit, they're on the fringe. Guys like Hilton Stubbs, he could end up a 5-star. Justin Castro, he came to USC as a 3-star, committed. Now he's a 4-star. That's how these things work. Here's a list of guys that USC is in contention for and who are taking visits. So obviously, guys who are interested are going to be taking visits, and that's we have to kind of draw a line in the sand, so to speak, and say, all right, well, this makes it a realistic opportunity where USC can go get guys from. They just don't fall from the trees. So this past weekend, USC wrapped up their official visitor weekend with they had Trey McNutt and Jonah Williams. Those were 2 5-star safeties. Trey is from Ohio, Jonah from the state of Texas. So those are 2 more guys to consider. I do not think that USC will get both of them. And then you got this coming weekend. You got Summer Bash, number 1. It's full of guys that have pretty much every offer that they want, that they need, really. And when it comes to recruiting, look, that's where I look first to see how good I'm using figure quotes, the 3 stars are. Because when a program wants you, that tells you how good you are. So if all the blue blood programs, the USCs, the Alabamas, the Georgias, Ohio State, Oklahomas, if they're recruiting you, you're probably a really good player, no matter how many stars someone hangs around your neck. So anyway, this weekend coming up, just a few days from now, you have 5-star cornerback Dorian Brew. He's a recent late addition to the weekend. You want to know how good this young man is? Listen to this testimonial. This is from his high school coach. Well, he can play whatever he wants. He was asked what position is his best position. He's that good. He would be our best running back. He would be our best linebacker. He's our best guy, and he's very, very gifted. Drew's father, Derek Brew, was the 2004 Olympic gold medalist in the 4x400 meter relay and a bronze medalist in the 400 meters. His mom, Donica Merriman, was a sprinter at Ohio State and a member of the Ohio State Athletics Hall of Fame. So yeah, he's got some really good blood going through his veins. As I say, he comes from good stock. Now, he's from the state of Ohio. But he and his family, they live in Texas right now. That's where he's going to high school. He'll be moving back to Ohio. He's going to be a Buckeye. I would love for him to be a Trojan, but yeah, it's a tall task. You have linebacker Riley Pettyjohn, who's a high 4-star. Again, he could be a 5-star. But for the time being, we're going to just talk about the current 5s who are visiting. Throwing them out there. Keep them in the back of your mind because you might want to put them in your calculations once the algorithm changes. So unless, USC is Dorian Brew's dream school, I think only Juju Lewis from this weekend coming up will be the 5-star commitment out of this weekend. But again, guys are coming who aren't a 5-star technically, could be. So again, you have to keep that in the back of your mind when you're deciding how many USC is going to get. Now, the next recruiting weekend in 2 weeks, the weekend of June 21st, the big fish that USC is going to be looking to hook up on. That's the weekend that Elijah Griffin, from the defensive lineman from Georgia, he's making his visit. Look, if I'm Kirby Smart at this point, I'm doing whatever is necessary to make sure that Elijah misses his flight to Los Angeles. I've heard, and I've mentioned it on this show before. My everydayers will remember this. Eric Henderson, USC's defensive line coach, he said he doesn't just want a good defensive line class. He wants the best defensive class ever recruited in college football history. And that means it's going to require taking the 3 biggest peaches from the state of Georgia. You've already got Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson on board as far as defensive linemen. But he needs Griffin to complete that, we'll call it the hockey hat trick, right? You also have 5-star Jared Smith. He's a 5-star according to the 247 calculations. 6'6", 235 pounds. He's an edge defensive end from Hoover, Alabama. He's a top target for USC. Again, I know the algorithm is going to change as the stars change and they, guys get upgraded. But as of right now, today, when you're listening or watching to Locked On USC, part of the Locked On Network, or your first listen every day, USC has 3 committed 5-stars. Julian Lewis, Justice Terry, Isaiah Gibson. By the time these visits are over, if USC hit the recruiting jackpot, how many are they going to get? 6, 7? Lots of time until the signing days. You got the early signing period in December, the traditional conventional one in February. Some guys on the fringe will end up being ranked higher than before those days. I talked about that just a few minutes ago. However, if I'm picking a number, right? If I'm going out on a limb, I think USC is going to finish with 5. And again, part of my calculations are some of the guys that USC is interested in that are right now ranked as a 4-star, they're going to get a bump. USC is going to get 1 or 2 of those guys. Right? So 5 stars in their class, that's not too bad if you ask me. I don't think anybody should be disappointed. It's not like USC's coming off a great season where they went to the playoffs, coming off an 8-5 season. How many of you remember being a big-time Laker fan and watching the Lakers go to the finals back when they were playing the Great Western Forum with Magic and big game James Worthy? I do. Staples Center when Kobe was running things? I do. If your team is still in the playoffs, then with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front. That way, you know you're getting a great deal before you even check out. And you can buy your tickets in seconds. It'll take you 2 taps and you'll be done. Trojan fans, reminder, have you gotten your tickets for the game in Las Vegas yet? Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. And the game time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKED, D like David, ON like Nancy for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Watching Fox Sports, ESPN on your TV all day? You're hitting that mute button. Everyone's yelling, screaming. You don't have to do that if you make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. And it's streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app or the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Been running a series over there on wearesc.com, my other place I'm hanging out when I'm not here on Locked On USC. And it's a series called 3 Questions. It's 3 questions I have about each position group as we head into the summer player run practices. So this week, well, not this week, but my most recent installment was 3 questions about the tight end room. First question: what is the tight end's role in Lincoln Riley's offense? When Coach Riley was calling the offensive shots at Oklahoma, the tight ends were lined up in a multi-pack of positions. H-back, Y, traditional. Mostly, everyone kind of familiarizes the tight end play with Lincoln Riley at the H-back position, though. You can line them up everywhere. They can do a little bit of everything from run blocking, pass protection, and then eventually just slipping them out into the field, into a route, and just creating some coverage mismatches. And when Coach Riley took over, it's not like the roster was bereft of, tight end talent. Not when he arrived. Yeah, I get, it might have been injured more often than not, but Jude Wolfe, Ethan Ray, Lake McCree, Josh Follow, all those guys were once considered recruiting coups for Clay Helton. Those are all top tight ends in their class. All of them have moved on for one reason or another, though. Jude is still active. He's still giving it a shot down there at San Diego State. Fight on, Jude. Make it happen. Rooting for you. Now, besides Lake McCree, I shouldn't say they've all moved on. Besides Lake McCree, they've all moved on. But you haven't gotten much production from that group, at least, since Lincoln Riley took over. Tight ends coach, Zach Hansen. Well, the entire staff on the opposite side of the ball, they're entering their 3rd season. And so far, the position group has been used more, I would say, more in a support role than in any type of featured role. I can't remember a game where you went, wow, thank God for the tight ends. Needed them. Hasn't happened yet. So USC has recruited the position really well. And the depth, it's young. Depth should no longer be an issue. But what will their roles be? Coach Hansen was asked, that question 1 week into spring camp when they arrived. Okay. The short answer was they're going to have a big role. There was a more nuanced response where he, went on to talk about, he said, it really depends on what we can do. At that last place that they coached, they played a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of 11 personnel. But those guys had a ton of game experience. Well, here we are, right? It's 3 years later at USC, and the position is full of young and talented guys. So what's changed? What will their role be in 2024? Because the guys don't have a ton of game experience, save for Lake McCree. Question 2. since we just talked about the tight end depth, will there be enough opportunities? Miller Moss and Jaden Mayava and Jake Jensen and Gage Roy, those guys are going to have a tough enough time just satisfying their cadre of wide receivers that they have, right? I mean, you're talking about Zachariah Branch, Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane, Deuce Robinson. And now you got all those underappreciated guys that, they want to feel like they want to contribute. If you're going to recruit the tight end room and you're going to bring in the type of talent that USC is bringing in, that's a good problem to have. You got to figure out how to use it, though. There is a solution. Oh, don't forget, when Deuce Robinson was coming out of high school, he was considered the best tight end in the class of 2024. He was considered the number one tight end in the class. However, much like USC recruited big Mike Williams, BMW, coming out of high school, everyone else was recruiting him to be a tight end. USC was recruiting him to be a big wide receiver. USC did the same thing with Deuce Robinson. They converted him. So that's another, wide receiver that the quarterbacks have at their disposal. Could have been a tight end had he stuck around to that position. There would be plenty of opportunities. Now, as I alluded to above, despite the group's limited opportunities, the tight end room is stacking talent. Okay, I haven't even talked about this year, Joey Olsen. You saw him in the spring game. He flashed a little bit, showed you why he was considered one of the top tight ends in the country. You've got Walter Matthews, who's 6'7", 245 pounds. Sounds more like your traditional type of big body tight end that you line up at the end of the line of scrimmage. He'll be here in the fall. In fact, he'll be here in the summer. And so those guys are joining. You have second-year player Cade Eldridge. You have Carson Tabaracci, who transferred in the year before. He's already tried out the running back and linebacker spots. And you also have CJ Woods. And there's also Walker Lyons, who will be getting to USC shortly. He was part of the 2023 class. He finished up his missionary work, so he's enrolling now. So again, plenty of targets, right? Depth is not an issue. But there's more. Here's more of that nuance. How many opportunities is this group going to get? The wide receivers that I talked about, they need to be fed. And the experience level has not played a lot of games. I mean, it really does feel like a vicious circle right now when we're talking about the tight ends. But that's where we're at. A lot of talent. Young. Not a lot of game experience. So if you want to run that 12 and those different personnel packages that Coach Zach Hansen was talking about, what do? You're between that rock and a hard place. Just throw them out there, see what they can do. You can't take every tight end and make him a big wide receiver. Here's my third question about the tight end room. Real simple one. Is Lake McRee ready? He needs to be. I have zero doubt that the senior tight end is ready to get back out there with his teammates on the practice field. I saw him during the spring. He said he'll be ready. He told me off the record, I'll be ready. Fall camp, 100%. Well, the question is, will he be ready, though? He might be confident in it. He had a pretty significant injury. It was a knee injury. Coach Riley said this during the Holiday Bowl practices. In all my years of doing it, I don't know that I've ever seen an injury like that in a bowl practice. So Lake, last year in 2023, he played in 12 games, made it through the regular season, almost got to the bowl game. In those 12 games, 262 yards of production. But, it was everything else that he did behind the scenes that really doesn't show up in the stats, in the talking about his blocking, that game experience. His experience in all the different required blocking schemes, whether run blocking, pass protection, plus you have his athleticism in the open field. That's a perfect combination for that H-back role that Coach Riley likes to use. So to say that his return, is anticipated would be an understatement. Lake is not going to wow you with his, imposing size or his yards after catch. I mean, his best highlight was that catch and run, including that hurdle on the USC sideline that set up that first touchdown against Notre Dame back in 2022. So Lake brings a lot of stuff to the field. I like what he has in his repertoire. Look, what you're getting from him is a steady guy who can block, make plays when he's given the chance. And his ability to pass protect is what's needed the most, especially in game one. I guarantee you, when he's on the field, he's going to be the guy lining up on whichever side of the line of scrimmage Harold Perkins, the linebacker from LSU, is lining up on. Yeah, when USC and LSU play September 1st. Wherever Harold Perkins is, if he's lining up on Elijah Page's side of the ball, that's probably where the strong side will be. If he ends up over there on Mason Murphy's side, right tackle, that's where the H-back will be lining up behind Mason Murphy. But we'll see what happens. That JD Pickell, why can I not talk right now? JD Pickell, that guy from On 3, started to grow on me. He's their On 3 podcast guy, throws out a bunch of thoughts and opinions like I do. So I think he's growing on me. By the way, should I have him on the show? Should I make the request to see if I can get him on here? Hit me up. Let me know. The other day, I was cruising through social media, and he threw out a question. Every now and then he'll throw out a question. This one caught my attention. Made me go, good question. His latest. What team in college football has the, quote, now or never, end quote, vibe? So going into 2024, which team, it's now or never. Again, it's a vague question. Could apply to a lot of things. Got me thinking, does USC qualify for this now or never list? Maybe not for a national championship. No one wants to believe that the Trojans can put it all together in 2024. Everyone's putting that cap at 8 wins, 9 maybe. I think 10 is more likely in the ballpark. Mostly because of the defense, or the lack thereof in Lincoln Riley's history as a head coach. So is this Lincoln Riley's now or never year? Look, he went out and he put I'll call it his money where his mouth is. He went out and bought a hell of a defensive staff, Antonlynn. You got Doug Belk, Matt Entz, Eric Henderson. Or, does the move to the big conference, does that move it out a year? Does that now or never year? Is it pushed back one more season because of the move to the big conference? I mean, look, if you're Ryan Day in Ohio State, this might be your now or never season. Ohio State, look, they went out and used the transfer portal like some big spender going to Las Vegas. They stacked their roster. They had money to burn. Didn't matter what the cost was. They were going to go out and they were going to get what they needed. That's fine. Got no problem with that. Harbaugh has also gone from Michigan. And so are a lot of the guys that made that thing work up there. So if not in 2024 for Ryan Day in Ohio State, when? That's the difference between USC and Ohio State. Ohio State, everybody anticipates them not only being in the playoffs, but challenging for the national championship. That's not where USC is right now. The now or never is for Lincoln Riley, and can you get a freaking defense? So if it's not Ohio State's now or never in 2024, this is definitely Oregon's mantra year after year. I mean, it's wash, rinse, repeat in 2024 for Dan Lanning's cigar. Now or never, right? They went out. They did the same thing with the transfer portal. They overpaid for some players. Want to make sure USC didn't get one or two. We'll focus on one. Is it the year of Steve Sarkisian? He came close last year, right? Got to the playoffs. You know, I noticed in the thread that that JD Piquel started, there are a lot of votes for our friend Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss in 2024. Now or never. He's got a roster. The SEC, I won't say the SEC is down, but I think it's a little more open this season. I don't think there's any clear cut. Probably Georgia, but Ole Miss is probably right behind them. Definitely not Alabama. Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, they're going to be at the Coliseum in 2025. Just a reminder. So will Clay Helton and Georgia Southern. So now or never, have we reached that point for Lincoln Riley? Not for the team, but for him. You gotta show a defense. Doesn't have to be great. Doesn't have to be as good as UCLA's last year, although wouldn't mind that. But if Lincoln Riley puts together a top 50, top 40 defense statistically, is that good? Will that get the monkey off his back? I'll tell you what, if USC has a top 40, top 50 defense, and we know they're going to have a really good offense, they're going to be in the playoffs. I'll say it again. You know what else I'm going to say again? I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Locked on USC. I'll find some recruiting information. I'll dig it up somewhere. We'll talk about it. Locked on USC, part of the Locked on Network. Come at you 5 times a week. And again, when you're done making Locked on USC your first listen every day, get on over there to WeAreRC.com. We still have that summer subscription special. Spend $1. Check it out. You'll like what you see. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.